hopefully you take that as a challenge to be here on a monthly basis. We do typically have our first few meetings that look like this, and then they actually do dwindle down probably to 12 to 15 parents by the time the dust settles. So I hope you'll take the opportunity whenever you possibly can to come to our meetings and be a part of this, especially if you have questions. Rather than kind of going to people and maybe getting some misinformation sometimes, oftentimes it's a lot better to ask the question, and I'll be happy to try to answer the question. Now, you may not always agree with my response, but you will at least know exactly why we're doing certain things at the school versus kind of hearing it through innuendo sometimes. So I think that's very beneficial. A few other exciting things that have happened. Again, if you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, you've heard these things already, but one of the really cool things is we had an opening staff meeting on August the 18th with our teachers, and we had the luck of surprising our staff. And we mentioned the Jimmy Johnson grant, and as part of that grant, I mentioned the playground, I mentioned the healthy area that we're going to build in, but we also built into that outside learning experiences, and iPads were part of that process, and we had $14,000 put aside to purchase some iPads. As the summer progressed, we were going to buy some to put on a cart that we can move from class to class when we wanted to. As I was doing reading on Twitter and learning from people across the country, I started to change my philosophical view on how I wanted to roll this information out, or how I wanted to roll technology out to the school. And what I came to the PTO with was to say, if we truly want to show our staff that we're dedicated to the use of technology in our classrooms, the first group of people we have to get comfortable with the technology is our staff. One of the biggest misnomers that we've seen nationally is people bring in iPads and they throw them in the classrooms, and one, they're either misused, or two, they're not used at all impactfully for kids. And that was mainly due to lack of PD, lack of training. So we've come at it from an angle where we're doing more training with our staff, we're preparing them for it, and then once their comfort level grows, you will also see kids using these in the classroom on a regular basis. So I went to the PTO hoping to get a few extra iPads, and they were so gung-ho about it. We ended up being able to get every classroom teacher in our school an iPad. So we surprised all of our staff on that opening staff meeting. We had them report back to their classrooms, and they found an iPad with their name on it in their classroom. So it was an exciting day. So every classroom in our school has access to iPads now. At this point, it's one iPad per room in most cases, and I'll talk a little bit where that differs. But it will be used, you'll see it if you walk into classrooms during workshop time in math and reading, where students are actually using these devices to work on skills in the classroom. We use an app called Show Me, where with the new Common Core standards that nationally are being used, one of the big things that our students have to be able to do is really explain their understanding. So when we were in school, it was you learn a skill, you spit it up on a piece of paper, and you move on to the next thing. We are trying to move away from that with the Common Core, and it's more of you have to really explain why you did what you did. And the research says that once you can explain how you do something, you are more apt to be able to repeat that over and over and over again, versus some kids, and you may have been one of them, where you just said, I just know. I don't know why I know, but I just know. And then there's people like that. But the goal is to try to get kids to be more clarifying and explain more. But the Show Me app, if you have an iPad, is a really cool tool where your child can actually go on, and it's an interactive whiteboard, and they can actually talk and explain something as they work out a problem. And another cool site that this actually kind of came from was the Khan Academy, which is another site that kind of uses that concept where Salman Khan, and I can't remember what his actual degree was originally, but I think he was in some kind of financial business, but he actually goes on and he has videos for thousands and thousands of things where you can go on and your child can actually work on differentiated tasks and get stars for completing certain things, and once they get so many right, but if they don't understand something, they click an icon and a whiteboard comes up and he actually physically explains it to you. And it's a benefit for kids in some things. Now, some kids don't need that all the time, but it's a good tool. So the Show Me app is a way that a teacher can kind of assess the child without having to do a paper and pencil test all the time. So you may see more of that going on in the classroom. You may see teachers sending you home emails that say that, this is how we're doing long division. I want to make sure our parents understand this is what it looks like. And you may see a teacher show that. Last year we had several teachers use it that way. So hopefully you'll start to see the tool of the iPad being used as a creation device for our kids. Right now you're seeing it probably, a lot of our teachers are sending home Animoto videos, which they take video of what's going on in the classroom, they put it to music, and that's a really good feel-good thing for parents to see, and it's a good starting point as you try to get parents or teachers comfortable with the devices, but the goal is to go beyond that, where kids are actually using them on the regular basis. And it's not just for rote skills. There's tons of apps on the iPad for rote skills, which are basically drill and kill kinds of things, which is, there's a place for that repetitive stuff. But there's also ways where kids can actually use other tools to really create in the classroom. So where you give kids options. So some people may want to write, other people may want to verbally explain, other people may want to act it out. And you can use different tools to do that. So it's going to give children opportunities to really show their strengths, build skills, and be able to still be assessed on those skills at the same time using rubrics and different things. So that's kind of where the vision is going in that regard. The smart board, which you see here at this school, is really going to be a thing of the past. They're about $4,300 a piece. And the problem is they start to age out like a car. And then you have to replace pieces, and it costs a large amount of money. So what we're looking at doing instead is buying projectors for classrooms, using Splash Top and other tools that will allow the projector to interact with the iPad, and the teacher, instead of being anchored to the front of the board to manipulate or have the kids come up front, I can actually walk around with the iPad and go to the child at their seat and have them write, and it'll show up on the projector. So that's kind of where we're heading, but we're not there yet. Just to kind of give you a vision. Yes, sir?
One suggestion.
Yes.
You might want to look into what they call the iTV.
Apple TV.
Yep.
I have.
We use them, and I work for Barretts County Schools. I'm an Apple engineer for them.
Yeah, see, the problem we're having right now is our server. I bought one last year to play with here. I have one in my house, but I bought one last year to play with here to see how it was going to work. It works on our network right now. We have Nortel at our school. We're transferring over to what's called, it's Cisco, and it is not working well with it. So we have one, we're playing with it, but it actually was originally where I was going, and I've kind of had to step back and think about it more because we've run into some problems as a system.
Well, cost-wise,
yeah, it is absolutely.
$99.
The example, what he's talking about, Apple TV, which they're not bringing a new one out for a couple years. I know they're not bringing one out this year, but it's a device about this large. That hooks to the back of your television, and it allows your iPad or Apple computer to interact with the television. So I can sit in my living room as an example and click on my iPad and it'll pull up my screen. So, something as simple as a video, pull up YouTube, I can show it on here. But if you were going to use the Show Me app that I mentioned, you can go around and it would automatically, they call it mirroring, it would mirror your device and allow it to show on the TV screen. The projector and the overhead screen does something similar, and we don't have to deal with the network issue that we're running into. So that's kind of where we're looking right now because of that network issue. But I agree, that is actually nationally where I was looking to go after reading a lot about it, but we've run into some roadblocks.
Yeah, we're kind of phasing these out too.
Just because of the cost. So that's exciting. Now, follow up. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Are the projectors going to be set up in a situation where they're in each classroom, or will they be able to?
No, well, we haven't gone down that road yet, but my goal is to try to get a projector in every single classroom that doesn't have a smart board to start. Okay. I would like to mount them, eventually, but the cost is too exorbitant at first.
They could be transferred.
Right. The goal is to allow the access in every room. The smart boards, you don't need it necessarily because you can use a dongle and attach your iPad up to your smart board. So teachers that have smart boards in their room can actually attach their iPad right up to the computer and it'll show up here automatically. Or they have obviously the use of the smart board tools too as well. So we're looking at quite a few different things in that regard to the projectors, but it's exciting. Now, I mentioned every teacher has an iPad now in our content classes. We also have a few in our media center. Our EC department bought 2 with a donation from a parent. So we have quite a few throughout the building. But in 5th grade, our 5th grade teachers won a grant. So last year, all of our grade levels got the opportunity to apply for a grant with our school system, where our 5th grade team won. So every classroom teacher in 5th grade got an iPad. So they all have one just like everybody else. But the neat part is every class is going to have 10 additional iPads for their room. Now, we can't use them throughout our building. They're just for 5th grade.
Do we have those yet?
No, they come next week, actually. They come and get configured next week. But when they come, that means each 5th grade class, all 7 of our classes, will have 10 additional iPads to use in their classroom with their kids, which will take it to an entire different level. So that's exciting news for our 5th grade, and that will be something that they will be able to learn how to use. The big issues, parents are concerned a lot of times, well, what are they going to have access to, and, are they going to be able to do this, that, and the other? And a couple things to hopefully alleviate some of that. One question that constantly comes up, my child doesn't have an iPad, or my child doesn't have one of these tools, is it going to be equitable? And the answer is going to be yes. My job as a principal is to make sure we're exposing all of our children to having access to these tools, even if they don't have one at home or a parent doesn't want to send one in. So we are looking at ways that we're going to be able to do that. 2, the wireless system that our kids will use is filtered, just the same as our landline computers. So a child gets blocked on a landline computer at our school right now. The same thing will happen on the iPads. They will not be able to access things on their iPad that they can't access on these computers right now. So it is a filtered wireless site. And our teachers have to deal with that too. So you can't access certain things. You can't even access certain blogs because they're flagged by our school system as inappropriate for schools for whatever the reason may be. So that's another thing. The third thing that constantly comes up in my mind, just went blank, is really tied into procedures. Well, they're going to cyberbully on these tools, they're going to do that. And my answer to that is the same thing as we would see in a regular classroom. It all comes down to classroom management. It's not the tool. A child can write something hateful on a sheet of paper or make a phone call to make a hateful comment just as easily as they can do it on a web tool. So what we have to do as teachers is figure out ways to create procedures and routines with our kids to make that work. So it's really not the tool that is the danger. It is more of a procedural expectation with our children. So that is going to be something as a school we're talking about pretty regularly to make sure that we're teaching digital citizenship, obviously, but also making sure that there's solid procedures in place to use this just like anything else. We have to set procedures and expectations with our children and to make sure that they understand how we're going to use it. And if they don't use it in certain ways, they won't be able to access the devices anymore. Yes?
With the whole technology, are we doing the bring your technology to school
Good.
And with what you guys are planning, if they don't have an iPad but they have a tablet of some sort, will it be able to work?
It would. The first question is, do we have BYOT yet? And the answer is no. We applied for a grant, or not a grant, I'm sorry, we applied to be a pilot for BYOT. If you paid attention last year, big news article came out on a Sunday in the Observer. CMS is going BYOT system-wide. I think it was in April. And since that time, they've had to really backtrack on that statement because it's way bigger than people thought it was going to be network-wise. So what they've done is ask schools that are interested in being pilots to start it to go ahead and apply. So we had to do a survey of where we're at as a school, how we're going to measure the use of the tools, how we're going to communicate with parents about it, how we're going to be able to keep track of our kids improving learning because of so on and so forth. We all had to turn that in. So we should hear hopefully in the next couple weeks if we're going to be named the pilot. If we are named the pilot, which is I'm hoping, any device would work on that network. So if you had the new Kindle Fire that's coming out that I read about last week that's supposed to be a little bit bigger like an iPad, but at a third the cost, that will work on the wireless network just like the iPad will. So those in the Kindle Fire itself would be able to work. So all those tools would work on that filter network as well. So that would not be a problem at all. The other question people say is, what happens if they're stolen, things like that. And we do ask our parents to sign a waiver that if you decide to let that come to school, it's your responsibility. Though we have not had issues in the 1 year that we had them, it could easily happen. I had my son had his iPad here all last year, using it mainly as his Kindle, and he didn't have any issues at all. But he is a little apprehensive now that he's in middle school. He has not brought it to middle school yet. Basically his choice, though. He just does not trust the situation yet. So he hasn't brought it. So he's going back to regular books for now. But we have kids that, we had one that was taken, we ended up getting it back. And there are ways, if you do have an iPad, to keep track of them. There's a sonar device in them that you can actually hunt it down.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, what's your question, I'm sorry.
That was what I was
yeah,
gonna say, the GPS
yeah.
app and.
So, but you know, it's obviously always a concern. So know this, that I am not advocating that absolutely unequivocally every parent in this school needs to go out and run and buy their kid a Kindle Fire or a Kindle or anything like that at all. If you're comfortable with it, you know, there is a process that we'll follow to do it. We do have kids that bring Kindles into school, the cheaper $79 ones, they're all over the place. At Christmas time when they came out, we had a big explosion of the cheaper version. I think there's even a cheaper version getting ready to come out for the Kindle. So, you know, there's going to be that going on in our school, but it will be able, if we get the pilot. If we don't get the pilot, only 5th grade is going to have access to it initially because of their original grant. So my hope is everyone's going to. I think I only have a couple more things.